India is a country with a rich culture and a history that dates back more than 5,000 years. There are more than 1,600 languages spoken here, and many religions like Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism have originated in the last 5,000 years. The country celebrates numerous festivals throughout the year, which reflect its vibrant and diverse culture. India indeed has a rich and diverse history and culture that spans thousands of years, and there is a lot in store for the future years as well. On that note, please welcome Mr. Vikaas M. Sachdeva, who will be speaking on India's rise to being a superpower. Before that, let me tell you a little bit about Mr. Sachdeva. He's an industry stalwart with over 3 decades of experience in the asset management business. He is currently the managing director of Sundaram Alternates, driving growth across different platforms, geographies, and asset classes. Welcome, sir, and over to you.
Thank you, Akriti. Thank you, PMS AIF World, for this opportunity. It's always a pleasure coming in and talking. And I think from what I heard, there are over 2,500 people who have registered, and a lot of people have logged in. So a very warm welcome to all of you. The topic which was given to me today was India's rise to being a superpower. And that set me thinking. So along with my team of Arjun, Pranav, Tejas, and Aditi, we actually started brainstorming that what is it that every time there is there is some good tidings coming in, we start talking about India being a superpower, and then 5-7 years down the line we look back and say, well, okay, we missed the bus. Is there something which can give us a perspective of this time it being a more structural opportunity, or these are just numbers which are coming in? I mean, in any case, if you look at it, once you cross $2,000 per capita GDP, there is a certain growth which does come into country. So you have countries like South Korea, you have countries like Taiwan, Malaysia, all of them have done extremely well. So we will also do well. But when you're talking about being a superpower, what is it that gets into the melting pot? Has history left any markers for us to believe that indeed this time we are going to be probably on our way to becoming a superpower, or as what Kamal loves talking about it, India being the Sone ki Chidiya or the golden bird? So this is just an attempt, to bring together a few perspectives. I must confess that these are perspectives which are more of leaps of faith, and so I would urge you to look at the thought behind it rather than trying to find whether any data or any perspective is historically correct or factually correct. I will just take this forward. So like I mentioned, different countries and civilizations have had different growth paths, and the journey to becoming economically prosperous has been different for different countries. However, there have been some which have been more structural than others. When you say structural, I mean it is more sustaining, more long-term, and more often than not, these tend to be more of a superpower or economic leadership sort of a basis. We've always been expected to assume economic leadership. I mean, I remember, in a way, I think our generation, we are destiny's children. Post 1991, when the liberalization, the first wave happened, everybody expected India to be a superpower. So all of us, including me, benefited by being at the right place at the right time in the right country. And whether we like it or not, those are tailwinds which have really, really helped us. But at a country level, India did not really take off. It took off, stopped, started again. I mean, there was some talk about India taking off. So it's not been a structural sort of a journey. Trying to understand why. What seems to have changed now? And that's some of the thing which you are trying to find out. They say that history is a bad motorist. It rarely ever signals its intentions when taking a turn. You can only look back and say, oh, this was something which happened in history. You will never know actually when the turn is taking place. So we try to see if there's a correlation between thought leadership and economic superpower status. I repeat, we're trying to find out a correlation between thought leadership and economic superpower status. Ergo, is India on its way to becoming the Sone ki Chidiya, economic superpower, the golden bird, etc.? Now, like I mentioned, this discussion is based on certain assumptions, opinion, crowdsourced data. I talked to about my colleagues who helped me in this. So we enjoyed making this presentation, creating this presentation, and bringing it to you. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did while making it. Simple 4 parts. India has always been a thought leader. India in its golden ages. We're talking about 2 other countries, USA in its prime, China coming of age, and then India and the mantle of the golden bird. Is this something which is what we want to truly and absolutely take on us, or is this something which every time it comes, we start to falter? Let's talk about India going back through the ages. Let's talk about the Chola Empire. I mean, a lot of people would have seen PS1 and would come back to me with some more factual data, but truly, what I'm trying to understand is what were the cultural paradigms around that time. The Chola Empire has been one of the most powerful empires this country has ever witnessed, the most powerful and influential empires. They originated from southern India, but I will show you a map in terms of how their sphere of influence extended across the globe. What were the key tenets? I think they wielded global influence through dissemination of domain knowledge from the cultural, intellectual, and scientific achievements. Am I audible? Uh, Charmi, Kamal, am I audible? Yeah, okay. Yeah, just let me know if I'm not. If you look at culture, one of the biggest manifestations which you see is in the terms of the riveting temple architectures which have been created. Not just that, there are several religious and philosophical texts, and it was literally a period where all of this flourished. If you look at the intellectual, sort of heft which the Chola Empire had, you actually had Siddhanta Shiromani, which was written by the astronomer and mathematician Bhaskara too. And this helped the Chola Empire prevail and develop the mathematical and astronomical influence in the region. We're talking about surgery and medicine. Sushruta Samhita was written at that point of time, which till today, for most people who are in the medical fraternity, is sort of a beacon in terms of medical knowledge and practice. In those day and ages, you're talking about surgery. Now, this is as far as cultural paradigm goes. How did it translate it in terms of economic landscape? There was a massive manifestation in terms of economic clout. You can just see how far the Chola Empire had spread. And one would want to believe that because of the sort of cultural strengths which the Chola Empire brought to the table, it started percolating in terms of trade, agriculture. I mean, if you could build some amazing temples, you have that capability to build world-class irrigation system of dams, canals, and reservoirs. Once you have that nerve center in place, then trading of goods and ideas with Southeast Asia, China, and the Middle East would create a very conducive for working trade environment for you. Again, attention to detail, high quality textiles, metalwork, and craftsmanship, they were known for that globally. So that actually helped fuel the entire trade balance. Economic leadership then led to becoming a superpower. They were one of the most amazing seafaring powers, the major seafaring power, and they had such a strong navy, it controlled the Bay of Bengal and the Indian Ocean. So what history is trying to tell us is that by virtue of the fact that this was a regime which was extremely culturally strong, it manifested itself in terms of the economic leadership, thought leadership leading to economic leadership. Let's take one more example, and there's several. I'm just taking one or two just to help buttress the point. Let's look at the Gupta Empire. Chandragupta Vikramaditya. He was the ruler of the Gupta Empire, and again, his global influence was wielded through a domain knowledge across cultural and intellectual achievements. Kalidas was born during that time. Once you have a fertile environment in terms of literature, arts, music, you have people from the world coming in, participating, adding to the melting pot, which again uplifts the entire cultural paradigm. This helped to establish India as a center of culture and learning. More importantly, you had mathematicians and astronomers like Aryabhat and Varaha Mihira who have actually helped advance the sciences there. Now, how did it help in terms of economic leadership? Again, one of the biggest things which the Vikramaditya Empire established was a currency system. Start thinking about those days and age, you had a currency system. Once you have a currency system, you actually can engage in much better control, not just over the economy, not just over your own people, but over global trade. Once you have control over the global trade, it will help you fund a lot of other things, including an unprecedented military expansion, and thereby win the allegiance of smaller kingdoms. His reign was considered to be one of the most prosperous and cultural reigns in Indian history, and it was actually called the Golden Age of India. It lasted between 320 to 550 CE, and it spread from West Bengal to the eastern frontiers of Bengal. The West Coast. So again, this is another example of cultural paradigms shifting into economic paradigms, leading to being a superpower. Let's take more recent example. Let's talk about America. A lot has been talked about America being a superpower. What actually led to America being a superpower? We spoke to a few people. We tried to find out. Well, see, what happened is post World War II, the population of the world was actually reeling under the vagaries of war. You had a lot of shortages across the globe. You had disinterested people. You had different ideologies like communism at one end, which was not really conducive for the people at large. I mean, there was a lot of suffering across the globe. What did the USA do at that time? The USA was actually not as badly ravaged as most other countries across the globe in the world were. USA started talking about the American dream. Okay, I'm sure all of us have heard about the word the American dream. What is the American dream? In a nutshell, it's a land of equal opportunity. It doesn't matter who you are, where you come from. This is a place where you come. Your karma is more important than your dharma. A land of prosperity and abundance. They showcase the fact that America is a land where you could come, make a living, have a good standard of life, come with your family, enjoy your life. And they exported this vision through the soft power of Hollywood. Hollywood actually took the American dream across the globe. So think about it. If you're sitting in a country like Russia in the 1950s, where you don't even have proper food to eat, and what is beaming through your television channel is a sitcom which talks about an American family sitting in front of a TV, enjoying a good evening, good food, etc., etc. That is the American dream. Needless to say, they attracted the best of immigrants across the world, and they created a tremendous intellectual heft. You had people from all walks of the world coming in. A lot of them came from India also created a strong intellectual heft. They became a global manufacturing powerhouse, and in recent times, they become a technology powerhouse because of that. So that is the thought leadership. There was a very clear intent to export the American dream. In fact, I read about an article wherein I think one of the US presidents, when they went to Russia, they actually recreated a shopping mall in Russia so that people could come into the mall and experience what it is, just to show that America is far ahead of Russia. This is what the American dream was. Well, capitalism led to materialism. So it was good to make money. If it is good to make money, it is good to buy things which you like. And if it is good to buy things which you like, you can actually buy more and more. Excesses were accepted, And how do you buy more and more? Obviously, you have to leverage, you have to take credit. So credit became the fulcrum to happiness. Materialism became the fulcrum to happiness. I need to have a largest car, I need to have a big house, I need to vacation abroad. Needless to say, American corporations tapped into this global consumer demand. You had giants emanating out of America. Some of the companies you already know, like ITT, Continental Baking, Hartford Insurance, and Avis Rent-A-Car. Interestingly, America also pioneered the concept of franchises like McDonald's. It was a great time to be an entrepreneur in America. And that is what led to these global giants coming in. Also, America boosted its military capability. There were wars happening across the world. What the US did is, because they were prosperous, because they had the intellectual heft and the economic heft, they started building the military capability, offering protection in a way to smaller countries, and forged global alliances and control the world narrative. In fact, they formed strategic alliances, free trade associations with 20 countries. It actually peaked out in 1970 when the dollar became the reserve currency. It led to the world investing in the USD as a safe haven. Again, think about, right? Led to the world investing in the USD as a safe haven, and many countries, needless to say, just pegged the currency to the dollar. This helped America fund its excesses and deficit exponentially. In terms of, you had America reaching the $2,000 per capita GDP mark, and you had a strong sort of tailwind in terms of thought leadership. And this is what started happening. US capita per GDP crossed it at $2,000 in 1950. You saw the number of shopping centers grow. Some of the statistics, just to give you an idea, in terms of TV sets from in 1946 to 1960, it just went up manifold. So did the number of car sales. It just boomed exponentially. This is the USA in its prime economy from 1950 to 1970. And these are some numbers, when you see 1950 to 1970, how things started moving. The per capita income moved from $2,000 odd to $5,200. As a percentage of world exports, the US rose from 4% to 12.8%. Energy demand went up, share of renewable energy went up. Credit to GDP. I talked about people leveraging. Of course, it's far higher now, but it jumped from 57% to 90%. Defense spends went up. Needless to say, the GDP grew, from 2.3 trillion to around 5 trillion in this particular period. Let's talk about China. This is a recent example. China actually has had a very checkered history. We all know about China's recent successes, but before that, China actually went through a lot of trouble. There was a great famine which happened. It's very well documented. You can actually go through it. I think the leaders there realized that communism in its implemented form had actually not succeeded. And there was a population which was getting extremely restless because there was nothing to eat. In fact, having the largest population in the world became a weakness at that point of time. Now, you had the average Chinese political leader who was looking at both the American dream at one end and also the Japanese model of manufacturing from very, very close quarters. And this is what China did. They exported the vision of a vibrant, capitalist-oriented communist country to the world. Okay, they said that we will manufacture for the world. They turned into the world's largest sweatshop in the early 2000s. They became the world's cheapest producer for low-end goods. Made in China. Even today, there are all of these jokes we go around in terms of Chinese quality, and it was true. They became the world's cheapest producer for low-end goods. And what they did is they invited large companies to come and set up manufacturing bases. Okay, they rolled out the red carpet for them. They could do that. They could just push through things because they were a communist country, but they were very capitalism oriented. They said, "You come, what do you want? We'll give it to you." They rolled out the red carpet, and the large population became an asset because the labor costs were very low. Okay, but one thing which they did very smartly is they insisted on local partners for manufacturing. This is something people realize much later. But the vision they've exported, the structural opportunity they said is we are a capitalism-oriented communist country. China has been able to adapt, adopt, and accelerate. Again, if you look at China, around 2006, they reached the $2,000 per mark. There was already this thought leadership which was working, and how things have accelerated after that. China is credited for exporting disinflation through the globe. Costs were kept low. Lot more people, lot more manufacturing companies started coming to China to outsource manufacturing. This exporting of disinflation, keeping the prices low, actually encouraged further consumption globally. It was a virtuous cycle which actually China broke into. Encouraged further consumption, more outsourcing to the country. Now, the local players started imbibing the best practices from their global partners. You had shoe manufacturers, car manufacturers, everybody coming in manufacturing there with a local partner. They just started imbibing that, to put it mildly. Gradually, the quality of products started improving because the local manufacturers also struck out on their own, learning from this. In fact, there was a huge Chinese population which was very willing to buy these cheaper versions of global goods so that, in terms of consumption. And the Chinese companies just got better and better and better in terms of producing these goods. China crossed per capita GDP of $2,000, like I mentioned in 2006. There was a resultant boom in consumption. These are all numbers which you already have. But I'm saying that this rise has been structural because it was accompanied by a very strong thought process. Thought leadership has led to economic leadership, led to it becoming a superpower. Interesting, this chart is one of my favorite charts. It shows that, in 2006, there were 16 cars per 1,000 people in China. Today, India is already 13 cars per 1,000 people. That's another marker I think I'll talk about as we go ahead. Okay. By the way, of late, China has pivoted very smartly towards a premium export strategy. Now you are talking about the same Chinese companies who are manufacturing knocked off goods. They are now standing and gaining market share globally, along with their erstwhile manufacturing patrons. They're running with the hares and hunting with the hounds. 78% of China's exports today are premium play products. They started off as a world sweatshop. Today, 15 years later, 78% of its total exports are premium play products. They lead the world in new tech and electric vehicle manufacturing, and they're no longer the sweatshop of the world. Structural growth. How has this turned out in terms of numbers? From 2006 to 2021, this is the period under consideration. GDP per capita has gone up from $2,000 odd to around $12,500. 15 years. Okay. The retail market size has gone up from 1100 billion to 6600 billion. You're talking about share of renewable energy, energy demand, credit to GDP, of course, has gone up, fueling consumption locally. Equity market cap has gone up by 10 times, actually 12 times. And the GDP has gone up from 2.7 trillion to 17 trillion at this point of time. This is what has happened when you had structural growth, or rather economic leadership being backed by thought leadership. Having said that, let's look at India. Our big flex has been our intellectual heft. People talk about artificial intelligence. I think we've had tremendous amount of natural intelligence in the digital domain. Globally, most CEOs in most companies are Indians. But if you look at it locally, we have stood up and taken advantage of every opportunity the country has got. You're talking about the late 90s, early 2000s, companies like TCS, Infosys, Wipro, they've taken full advantage and they've become global corporations in their own mind. Interestingly, India is the largest analytics crucible on the planet. Okay, there's a lot of big data analytics which is collected by India, which is one of the reasons why India wants to keep this data within its shores. Now, how has this been, collected? You've had financial inclusiveness through the JAM Trinity, the UPI transaction platform. We are all aware of the world's largest COVID vaccination program. It's amazing to most foreigners today that we have a vaccination certificate, which is a digital certificate. Okay, India's brain pool is actually now presenting local solutions on the global stage. So what has been India's vision to the world, if one has to encapsulate, it is basically driving low-cost technology solutions, driving growth and governance through low-cost technology-driven solutions. And what has really helped India is the two pillars of data and tech. Okay, this is what India is exporting to the world. India will show you how to manage growth and governance digitally. Our digital infrastructure is second to none. By the way, we are also building physical infrastructure. We're also doing a lot of things, but this is what we can show you, we can teach you, and you can learn from us. In this country, we do elections electronically, in the sense that there is an electronic voting machine, not postal ballots. Subsidies are transferred digitally, not through checks, through mail. This is what India is showing to the world. Well, what looks likely in the next 10, 15, 20 years? India has again crossed the $2,000 per capita mark. So this time it looks like that economic growth is being fueled by a strong thought leadership. This is what we're exporting to the world in terms of an idea. The world is buying into that idea. And incidentally, we're also growing. By virtue of the fact that you cross $2,000 per capita GDP income mark, you will have certain things coming your way. This is proven globally. But if you have to become a superpower, it has to be backed by thought leadership. This is exactly what is seen here. Looks like the economy is set to fire on both cylinders, consumption and investment. In fact, one of the most amazing things is that India is to spend a lot of money on basic consumption. That is actually set to drop to 25% in the next couple of years, from around 50% 30 years ago. That's saying quite a bit, which means that you will have that much more money to spend. The annual nominal GDP is expected to grow at 12% CAGR over the next 10, 15 years. Economy is expected to expand to 3x in the next 15 years. These are all data which we've sourced. And if you're talking about the per capita GDP, we're talking about by FY30, more than double in terms of what we are currently. I talked to you about UPI. This is already starting to show up in the world stage. India has had more number of real-time transactions than 3 of the world's largest economies, which is China, US, and UK combined. India has actually crossed 12,000 UPI transactions. We don't realize how much of a blessing it is, but if you travel abroad today, you realize you're so conditioned to it that you reach out to your mobile phone to make a payment instead of paying cash. Whereas most of the world, it's still cash and credit card. So what does it look like from 2021 to 2031? This is an estimate, okay, which we've sourced. Well, you're talking about GDP more than doubling. You're talking about India getting a larger share of the world exports from 2.2% to 4.5%. The retail market size more than doubling. Energy demand obviously be more than double. Household income is expected to go up more than 5 times. The share of renewable energy, this is something which India is again leading the way in terms of renewable energy, but it is still very early stages. The proof of concept is yet to accumulate on a larger scale, which is why I have not looked at it. But again, knowledge. Credit to GDP, we are now starting to leverage far more. IT services, The equity market cap is expected to go up by 3 times, in the next 10 years. And of course, the GDP is expected to go up by 150% in the next 10 years. This, ladies and gentlemen, I think is the prosperity which we're looking at from a country point of view. Okay. So what am I trying to say? That in a nutshell, we've talked about history showing you various markers. Economic leadership is a given. Economic growth is given if you have, if you cross $2,000 per capita GDP. But if you want economic leadership, you want to become a superpower, it has to be a vision which you export to the world, and the world buys into it and is willing to be led by you, which is what India started doing. Now, very quickly, what are we doing at Sundaram Alternates? We're extremely excited about this opportunity. I'm sure this opportunity is available to everybody, but we are very, very excited about capitalizing on this opportunity. And just take a few minutes on that. We actually have 4 themes, which we work on. These are wealth multiplier themes. As you can see, it actually is capitalizing on all the growth trends emanating in the country. Financial inclusiveness, which is organized lending, phygital blue chips, traditional companies which are adopting technology to create a moat around their business. Consumption SARS, we believe consumption is going to be a big multiplier effect in the economy this time. And export voyages, not just selling locally, but selling globally, as well as getting global companies to come and outsource things in India like IT and pharma. And some sector allocation details which we have showcased here. That was equity. If you talk about debt, there is a tremendous amount of appetite for debt in this country. Most people start thinking that there has been a decline in mutual fund credit assets, which means that the appetite for risk has gone down. Actually, it's not. It stepped into AIFs. You have high net worth individuals. See, what we are talking about here is that all of this growth has to be fueled through a mix of equity and debt. A lot gets talking about equity, but not enough about debt. Private credit is at an inflection point in India. When I'm talking about private credit, I'm talking about credit which is going to be in the books for 6 years, 7 years, 10 years. Okay. If India is to become a $5 trillion economy, it needs to add around 2 to 2.5 trillion in credit to support this growth. High net worth individuals, family offices, they have started investing in AIFs as a more structured vehicle of getting into high yield debt. We believe that over the next 5 years, there could be opportunities over 50 billion, which will come in the credit spectrum in the Indian context. In fact, 7 new credit funds have registered in H1 2022, just focusing on this. Not surprisingly, this is, a chip of the old block, as they say, from the global economy. In the global economy, private credit actually accounts for 15% of global private assets, and it's actually growing at a CAGR of 17% going forward. This is also happening because banks have turned hyper cautious, and there's a growing awareness of the skill sets private vehicles like AIFs bring to the table in terms of analyzing and investing in these opportunities. Some of the funds which we have funds across the PMS and the AIF platform. We had 4,200 crores of assets currently. We've been in business for around 15 years now. Some of our funds have got a spectacular track record, has seen various cycles. Sundaram India Secular Opportunities Funds, 13-year track record, 17% CAGR, alpha of 6.4% over the benchmark post expenses. Sundaram Emerging Leadership Fund, 12-year track record, 16.5% CAGR, alpha of 5.3% post expenses. And Sundaram Voyager. We've got 5 strategies, and it's sold by distributors and private banks and private wealth outfits across the country. In terms of the AIF, we've got 2 types of AIFs. We've got Cat 3 equity AIFs, and we've got Cat 2 debt AIFs. Cat 3, we've got large and mid cap, and we've got consumption oriented AIFs. In Cat 2, we've got real estate AIFs, which we're calling real estate credit AIFs, which we're talking about in terms of Sundaram High Secured Debt Fund series. We raised 3 series. We've returned money in 1. Investors have been very, very happy with this. I mean, there's an entire ecosystem which works for the Sundaram, investment strategy. In fact, these funds have been rated CARE A1 plus for their fund management skills. Currently, we have a corporate debt opportunity fund. It's called Sundaram Emerging Credit Opportunities Fund. We've just done a first close in a span of 4 months. 200 crores has been the amount, and I think by the time we do our final close, it will be a multiplier of this number which will correct, going by the interest which is being shown here. Some of the awards, we won some awards at an industry forum. All of our strategies have won awards at an industry forum. And I'm hoping that today in PMS AIF World, we will also win some awards for our strategies. This is the team. We come from various walks of life. This is a melting pot of a lot of experience. Madan Gopal Ramu heads equity, Karthik Katria heads private credit, and this is the team. I would just like to end with this statement, which I started off with. I said, history is a bad motorist. It rarely ever signals its intentions when it's taking a turn. We believe in India, this is that rarely ever moment. History is turning a page. It is in our interest to stay the course. The next 10 years are going to be a massive, massive opportunity. This is, when I started talking about 1991, I talked about us being blessed to have been born, the tailwinds, we were lucky enough. I think we are lucky that we've got another opportunity in our lifetime. This is that opportunity. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.